Welcome everybody to this important event here on Education Day at COP22. This is a high-level education event on education as a driver for scaling up climate action. I'm your moderator. My name is Nick Nuttall. I'm the spokesperson for the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Without further ado, let us start this event. And I would like to introduce Her Royal Highness Princess Lala Hassana of Morocco and President of the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection. And I'd like her to deliver some opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Can I give you back? الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على مولانا رسول الله وآله وصحبه. السيدة المديرة العامة لمنظمة اليونسكو، السيدة الأمينة التنفيذية لاتفاقية الإطار للأمم المتحدة بشأن التغيرات المناخية، أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، حضرات السيدات والسادة. يسعدني أن أفتتح هذه الجلسة في هذا اليوم الذي جعله مؤتمر المناخ يوم التربية، لأتحدث في موضوع أهتم به كرئيسة لمؤسسة محمد السادس لحماية البيئة. وأود أن أشكر في البداية المديرة العامة لمنظمة اليونسكو السيدة إيرينا بوكوفا، والأمينة التنفيذية لاتفاقية الإطار للأمم المتحدة بشأن التغيرات المناخية السيدة باتريسيا إسبينوزا على ما تقدمانه من جهود متواصلة. إن البند 12 من اتفاق باريس يؤكد على أهمية التربية والتكوين والتوعية في مكافحة التغيرات المناخية. لذا علينا أن نحرص جميعاً هنا في مراكش على تضافر الجهود من أجل تطوير وتحسين التربية البيئية، خاصة في المجالات المرتبطة بالمناخ. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، حضرات السيدات والسادة، إن الميثاق الوطني للبيئة والتنمية المستدامة الذي أراده للمغرب صاحب الجلالة الملك محمد السادس ينص على ضرورة جعل ثقافة البيئة جزءاً لا يتجزأ من مناهج التعليم العالي والتكوين المهني. وهكذا عقدت مؤسسة محمد السادس لحماية البيئة شراكة مع وزارة التربية الوطنية لتعزيز الوعي البيئي لدى الناشئة. وموازاة مع ذلك أطلقت برامج تحسيسية موجهة للكبار. وعلى سبيل المثال أطلقت المؤسسة برنامج جودة الهواء الذي يمكن المقاولات من تخفيض حجم الانبعاثات المرتبطة بأنشطتها أو تعويضها بتجهيز المدارس القروية بالطاقات المتجددة أو غرس الأشجار. وبدعم من شركائنا الدوليين اليونسكو والإيسيسكو وبرنامج الأمم المتحدة للبيئة ومنظمة الزراعة والتغذية والاتحاد الدولي لحماية الطبيعة، تشارك المؤسسة في تقديم مخططات المناخ الخاصة بجهات المغرب 12. ويتضمن كل مخطط منها شقاً خاصاً بالتربية والتكوين، مما سييسر تنفيذها بنجاح. وعلى المنتخبين المحليين أن يستوعبوا الرهانات الخاصة بجهتهم ويقوموا بكل الإجراءات التي تضمن لهم كسبها. وأود في الختام أن أشير إلى أنني أترقب بكل اهتمام ما ستقدمه اليونسكو من خلاصات حول التغيرات المناخية والتربية في تقريرها العالمي حول التربية لسنة 2016. أتمنى أن تكلل أعمال هذا اليوم من برنامج الكوب 22 بنتائج مثمرة. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Thank you very much indeed. I now have the great pleasure of inviting Patricia Espinosa, who is the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, to make some brief remarks as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Her Royal Highness, Princess Lala Hasna of Morocco, President of the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environment Protection, Ms. Irina Bokova, Director General of UNESCO, Mr. Rashid Ben Mokhtar Ben Abdallah, I hope I said it correctly, Minister of National Education and Vocational Training of the Kingdom of Morocco, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm very pleased to be here today with all of you at this event. And I want to start by thanking Her Royal Highness, Princess Lala Hasna, for her leadership and commitment to climate change education and education for sustainable development. Let me also thank the Minister of National Education and Vocational Training of the Kingdom of Morocco for hosting this Education Day. And I am grateful to my colleague Irina Bokova of UNESCO and the members of the UN Alliance on Climate Change Education, Training, and Public Awareness for helping to organize this event. Here, we outline how education connects implementation of climate action by parties and by non-party stakeholders. Last year, countries of the world constructed a new vision for the future built on the Paris Agreement on climate change and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. On November 4th, the Paris Agreement entered into force just 3 days before the start of this historic UN Climate Change Conference. The international effort to bring the Paris Agreement into force in less than 1 year reflects the strong common political will to shift as quickly as possible towards low carbon, highly resilient economies and societies. These monumental agreements must succeed together. Accomplishing this will require an unprecedented scale and depth of concerted action by all governments, local and regional authorities, business and civil society organizations. It will also require action by teachers and youth in all countries. Implementation of the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals requires empowering people and raising our collective human institution capacity to act on climate change. And education empowers people. This year, parties have reviewed progress on planning, coordinating, and implementing Action for Climate Empowerment, or ACE, which is where education is found in the convention. The review showed many inspiring initiatives on climate change education. For instance, Indonesia and Uganda have developed national climate change strategies. The Dominican Republic allocated more than $1 million to train teachers on climate change. The Mexican National Climate Change Law includes education as one of its objectives. Non-governmental organizations have been implementing training activities, and youth organizations have raised awareness. Here in Marrakesh, we are convinced we will make great strides forward on education, and this is why I celebrate that we're having today Education Day. In 2015, the Climate Change Secretariat supported a unique public consultation on climate change in close to 100 developed and developing countries. Asked what actions would most likely help combating climate change, more than 77% said education on climate change for the broader public. People are thirsting for knowledge on this issue and a better understanding of what they can do. And we know that education is a very powerful force for the good. Education can foster changes in lifestyles, attitudes, and behavior needed for truly sustainable development. Education prepares children, youth, women, and grassroots communities to adapt to the impacts of climate change and seize the opportunities of this great transformation. Thank you, Your Highness, for your attendance and kind support. And thank you all for being here today and for your efforts every day.
And now it's, pardon me, now it's the turn of the youth. We're very delighted to have two young people, Aisha Owidi of Morocco and Milvan Le Morris from Kenya. Habari? Yes, that's Swahili. And you're going to present now the call of youth on behalf of your colleagues with a PowerPoint presentation. I think that's being handled over here. Thank you.
صاحبة السمو الملكي، أيها الحضور الكريم، أود بداية أن أقول أننا شباب حظينا بإمكانية تعزيز حسنا البيئي من خلال برنامج الصحفيون الشباب من أجل البيئة الذي أطلقته المؤسسة الدولية للتربية البيئية بغاية إشاعة حس بيئي يقظ لدى الناشئة من خلال مقاربة تربوية تدفع التلميذ إلى تقمص شخصية الصحفي في التعاطي مع المسألة البيئية. على مستوى المملكة المغربية انخرطت الناشئة منذ 2002 في هذا البرنامج الدولي بفضل مؤسسة محمد السادس لحماية البيئة التي ترأسها صاحبة السمو الملكي الأميرة الجليلة لالا حسناء وبشراكة مع وزارة التربية الوطنية بالمغرب. واليوم يعود الفضل كذلك لصاحبة السمو الملكية الأميرة الجليلة لالا حسناء في إتاحة الفرصة لنا كشباب العالم المنخرط في هذا البرنامج الدولي لإسماع صوتنا في هذا المحفل العالمي الخاص بالتغيرات المناخية. ولأننا شباب من مشارف وثقافات مختلفة وكي نصيغ رؤية مشتركة فيما بيننا وتكون لنا رسالة موحدة، التأمنا صبيحة يومه الاثنين 14 من نوفمبر 2016 في منتدى الصحفيون الشباب من أجل البيئة تحت شعار نحن بكوب 22 ونعمل من أجل البيئة، وعسارة آمالنا ومطالبنا يقدمها التلميذ ميلفين لي موريس من كينيا.
We, Young for the Environment, in the name of young people from all over the world enrolled in the Young Reporters in the Environment Program, considering that the future concerns us primarily. And because we refuse to resign ourselves to the idea that I am not responsible or to the inevitability of the concomitants of the development and exploration of natural resources. And for the humanitarian and development considerations, we would like to take the opportunity of the organization of the Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change to make the voice of youth heard and to ask for, create an international day to reduce the ecological footprint, urge countries to develop and accelerate the adoption of ecological footprint calculation systems, create an international United Nations organization of qualified young advocates for the environment elected by the Global Network of Young Reporters for the Environment to communicate new and rational ideas in the field of environment. Consider the praise winning of the Young Reporters for the Environment annual contest as ambassadors for environment issues. Guaranteeing the right of access to environmental information. Importance of integrate and anchor environmental generalization of eco-schools model at various educational cycles, popularization of modern communication methods in the educational process as an alternative to the means deplete natural resources, as well as the adoption of renewable energy. double the media efforts in the deployment of the culture of beauty and encourage the preservation of the environment permanently. Develop integrated action for the protection of the environmental heritage, including but not limited to the trees, heritage trees. For example, agan, juniper berry, quiver tree, aloe dichotoma, and red cedars. Thank you.
The remaining recommendations are our raised voice as youth on the occasion of the COP22 Education Day. Our call will certainly be heard by the UNESCO. Madam Irina Bovoka, to assure for the content, the embodiment into reality. صاحبة السمو الملكي، أيها الحضور الكريم، يسعدني أن أخبركم أن التوصية الأخيرة والتي تتجلى في خلق منظمة أممية عالمية للكفاءات البيئية الشابة لإيصال أفكار جديدة ورشيدة في مجال البيئة يتم انتخابها من طرف الصحفيين الشباب عبر العالم، تلقينا بخصوصها تأكيداً بتبنيها من طرف تنسيقية الشباب يونغو بمؤتمر الأطراف في الاتفاقية الإطاري للأمم المتحدة حول التغيرات المناخية، وأنها تكون إحدى التوصيات التي ستودعها تنسيقية الشباب يونغو لدى سكرتاريا الأمانة التنفيذية للاتفاقية الإطار للأمم المتحدة حول التغيرات المناخية. Create an international United Nations organization for qualified young advocates for the environment elected by the global network of young reporters for the environment to communicate new and rational ideas in the field of environment. Madam Patricia Espinova, Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC, this responsibility is placed from youth of today in your hands. We, future generations here in Marrakesh, and for which the conference is organized to ensure their right to live and sustainable growth in a secure harmony with climate and nature. We ask you to make resonance to the voice of youth and that this message find its way to be acted in line with the will of Morocco to let this COP22 a COP of action for the implementation of COP21 Paris Agreement. Thank you very much. شكرا لكم.
Thank you very much. We were supposed to have a PowerPoint presentation to go with the young people's statement, their call for action, but it didn't work, and I'm trying to wonder why. We know the Arctic is warming, and certainly in this particular bit of the Arctic, it's very warm indeed, so maybe it was something to do with that. Anyway, who knows? So one of the things we're also launching today is basically the Action for Climate Empowerment guidelines. And these are guidelines. There's a network of what we call ACE focal points around the world in governments. And these are guidelines to help them implement this. Now the PowerPoint's working, but we don't need it anymore. Thank you. So we're launching these new guidelines for the focal points in governments around the world, working on education, all the other issues associated with ACE. And so what I'd like to do is ask Patricia Espinosa, and Irina Bokova, the Director General of UNESCO and the Executive Secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, to launch these guidelines. And firstly, I'd like to ask Patricia Espinosa to perhaps hand over the guidelines to the UNESCO Director General. Would that be possible? Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Need you copy?
Merci.
Ms. Espinosa, I just wondered if you could possibly say a few brief remarks on this, or maybe I've got my schedule wrong. I think I've got my schedule wrong. There we go. Good. So we've had the family picture of the handing over the document. I would like to thank Her Royal Highness Princess Lala Sano of Morocco and Patricia Espinosa, the Executive Secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And now we're going to go to our second segment. Correct? Yes. Yes. Okay. I think it's your turn. I think you make some remarks on the guidelines. You have a second part to your speech. No? Let us just check. Yes. Could we ask the Director General of UNESCO to say a few words? Thank you.
Anyway, we are quite creative also in our approach. So, tout d'abord, Son Altesse Royale Lala Hasna, président de la Fondation Mohamed V pour le développement durable, c'est un plaisir et je voudrais exprimer ma profonde gratitude au gouvernement du Maroc et à vous personnellement pour l'organisation de cette journée de l'éducation à la COP 22, construite sur le modèle lancé déjà à Paris. Et je crois que c'est une bonne tradition déjà de parler de l'éducation au développement durable. Cette journée, mesdames et messieurs, reflète l'engagement de longue date du Maroc envers l'éducation pour le développement durable et le leadership exemplaire de Sa Majesté, le roi Mohamed VI et Son Altesse royale, la princesse Lala Hasna. Je garde en mémoire le vibrant plaidoyer de Son Altesse royale pour l'éducation au développement durable lors de notre conférence mondiale à Aichi, Nagoya en 2014, lors de votre discours d'ouverture. Et la Fondation travaille à tracer la voie de notre développement possible par des actions concrètes dans les écoles, auprès des communautés, en développement qui change les mentalités et pas le climat, qui est notre motto. And now it's an honor, jointly with the Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC, my dear friend and colleague Patricia Espinosa, these guidelines for accelerating solutions through education, training, and public awareness. Action is our key word at this conference, and this calls for partnerships. These guidelines go to the heart of our joint role in setting normative standards, in providing guidance to our member states. Every single state, from vulnerable small island developing states to advanced industrial nations, must step up action. The guidelines propose a clear 10-step plan to empower all stakeholders to craft and implement solutions to climate change. The approach, ladies and gentlemen, is quite strategic, comprehensive, and results-based. It is backed up by examples showing how change is happening, how to build resilience through education, public awareness, and knowledge sharing. And more than ever, we must reinforce international cooperation to root sustainability throughout society. And this starts on the benches of schools. So change minds and not climate. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And this brings us to the end of this particular segment of this event. And I believe it's time for Her Royal Highness Princess Lala to leave the stage. And I think Executive Secretary, you're leaving too. But we have the Director General of UNESCO staying with us. And we also have the Education Minister of Morocco with us too. So we'll move to the next bit. Thank you. Let's start, shall we? No, no problem. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming now to the second segment of our event, where we are launching the 2016 Global Education Report, which has been prepared by UNESCO with many, many partners. And we're very delighted that the Director General of UNESCO can be with us for this. And I'd first like to introduce Manos Antoninis, who is the Senior Policy Analyst, the Global Education Monitoring Report Team of UNESCO. And I'd like to invite him to present the 2016 Global Education Report, Key Findings on Climate Change and Education. So over to you.
Director General, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. The Global Education Monitoring Report is an editorially independent and evidence-based annual report published by UNESCO. It has the mandate of the international community to monitor education in the Sustainable Development Goals. And today, on Education Day at COP22, we're proud to be launching a publication called Planet: Education for Environmental Sustainability and Green Growth. This publication pulls together key sections from our 2016 report: Education for People and Planet, Creating Sustainable Futures for All, which looks at two key aspects. First, how are we going to monitor progress towards the 10 targets of Sustainable Development Goal 4 on education, including, critically, target 4.7 on education for sustainable development and global citizenship. And secondly, the multiple links and synergies between education and the other 16 goals in the Sustainable Development Agenda. Today, I will be sharing with you a few thoughts that examine the vital relationship between education and environmental sustainability. The aim is to help remind and guide countries their plans to materialize their nationally determined contributions in line with Article 12 of the Paris Agreement, which calls on parties to take measures to enhance climate change education, training, public awareness, public participation, and public access to information, what is now known, as we know, as Action for Climate Empowerment. It is recognized that living sustainably requires a huge shift in mindset, and education must be part of that change.
Education is proven to be the best tool for climate change awareness. Schooling can help students learn about a given environmental problem, understand its consequences, and the types of action required to address it. The higher the education level of an individual, the higher the chance that they will express concern for the environment, and the higher the chance that they actually will follow up this concern with activism to promote and support political decisions to protect the environment. Analysis of the 2010 International Social Survey Program showed, for example, that in Germany, one of the countries with the biggest levels of emissions, while only 12% of people with less than secondary education had taken such action, the level increased to 26% for those with secondary education and 46% for those with tertiary education. One way to achieve this is through informal schooling, is through the curricula. And yet, despite the magnitude of the challenge, it is surprising how many countries still do not directly address these issues in the curricula. Analysis that we conducted of 78 national curricula showed that only 73% of countries mentioned sustainable development, 55% mentioned ecology, and only 47% had environmental education. And let us also not forget how this term is framed differently in different countries and different contexts. In India, environmental education was mandated by the Supreme Court already in 1991. And in 2003, the government instructed the National Council for Educational Research and Training to produce the relevant content. Today, over 300 million students in 1.3 million schools are actually receiving some form of environmental education. But it is not just about adding vague terms in the curriculum when they are missing. While education and knowledge may be linked to awareness and activism, its links with other key behaviors are not well established. In the United States, for example, people with the highest education level display the highest degree of polarization in the way they perceive climate change risks compared to people with less education. And of course, let us not forget that people in wealthy countries with higher levels of education are more likely to lead lifestyles that leave a harmful ecological footprint, from increased food waste to higher levels of carbon dioxide from car use. This graph shows that countries that perform better on the Human Development Index, which depends on progress in education, living standards, and health, are also much likelier to have a much larger ecological footprint. Countries that have experienced rapid increases in education, such as the Republic of Korea and Singapore, have also seen their ecological footprint nearly double as domestic consumption has expanded. Therefore, for formal education to make production and consumption more sustainable, it needs to be the right kind of education. Thinking over the content of education has evolved accordingly in recent years. For example, initially, from a pure focus on transmitting scientific knowledge in particular disciplines, gradually there has been a shift to interdisciplinary thinking and also learning by exploration. More broadly though, and that's the most important point, it is recognized that the core of education should aim at developing critical thinking, problem-based, and collaborative learning. It needs to equip children and youth with key skills, such as communicating appropriately and effectively with people from other cultures and countries, comprehending other people's thoughts, beliefs, and feelings, and seeing the world from their perspective, adjusting one's thoughts, feelings, or behaviors to fit new contexts and situations, and analyzing and thinking critically in order to scrutinize and appraise information and meanings. As yet, there is unfortunately no formal and systematic process to assess the extent to which such skills really permeate the curricula of different countries, let alone whether these skills are acquired. We need to know how teacher education and student assessment are organized to really match these skills. Given this challenge, it's currently very difficult to understand where we are, monitor progress, evaluate what works, and learn what needs to be done. Whole school approaches aim to address such skills by not focusing only on curriculum, but also on instilling collective and collaborative action across the schools and through the relationship of schools with the community. Research on the impact of whole school approaches in England has shown that there have been improvements in the ethos of schools, as well in the overall ecological footprint of the schools and the learning of the students. However, the approach remains relatively isolated and not integrated in education systems. And in any case, and let us not forget, as Article 6 of the Framework Convention and Article 12 of the Paris Agreement remind us, it is not enough to ensure that just our schools become bastions of environmental sustainability and learning. The majority of the most critical decisions that need to be taken in the next 15 years will be taken by people who have already left school. Their adult education opportunities, therefore, are key. Beyond formal education, it is government agencies, religious organizations, non-profit and community groups, labor unions, and the private sector that really need to help change individual and collective behavior. In Ethiopia, the Ministry of Water, Irrigation, and Energy, with partners, launched a 2-year awareness campaign which was targeted at ensuring people change their use of energy off the grid, they stop using kerosene lamps and look into alternatives, making informed choices. It is estimated that governments need to increase energy research and development by up to 5-fold annually to achieve a quick transition to low carbon intensity. But greening of the economy will also require continuous training for low and medium skilled workers, not just at the high end. For example, in construction, this will require partnerships. In Cuba, the Center for Research and Development of Structures and Construction Materials developed low energy, low carbon building materials, but then worked with communities, municipalities, and manufacturers to get them to use these materials to build appropriate houses. 3 training centers have been established at universities, while other countries in Latin America, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East have adopted the model of developing sustainable building materials. This concludes my presentation and my thoughts. You can download the report at this link, but our message is, let us not forget, speak to different audiences, and therefore remind ourselves of how we need to work together. Please join the conversation and find out more about this publication and our report via the website or on Twitter at SDG for All. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much indeed, Manas, for that great presentation. We were hoping that the Minister of Education in Morocco would be with us, but I think he's been called away too. So that allows us to get to Irina Bokova, the Director General of UNESCO, for some questions. And I suppose our first question is, when we think of the landscape of the world right now, when we think of the huge global challenges that we have on this planet, do you think that the relevance of education is shifting? And what education actually is shifting in respect to these big global challenges, SDGs, climate change, so many of them. Is there a microphone here for the Director General? Okay, it's coming right now. Well, maybe join me on the stage. I think it's much better that way. Yeah, thank you.
Alors, si vous me permettez, je vais répondre en français. Tout d'abord, je dois dire que le rôle de l'éducation aujourd'hui, avec l'agenda 2030, devient crucial parce que c'est le nexus pour nous, pour l'UNESCO, et j'exprime notre approche, presque le nexus pour la mise en œuvre de tous les objectifs de l'agenda de développement durable. Parce qu'il n'y aura pas la solution des questions de la mise en œuvre de l'agenda sur le climat, l'adaptation et tout ce qui est la mise en œuvre de l'accord de Paris, et ici c'est le thème de la COP 22, sont l'éducation, sont la sensibilisation, sont une approche plus profonde à ce qui représente le changement de comportement, des mentalités dans, je dirais, l'espace global. Et quand nous avions préparé l'objectif numéro 4, nous avons largement discuté ces questions. Ce n'est pas seulement l'accès à l'éducation, ce n'est pas seulement ajouter l'éducation secondaire, mais c'est quel type de l'éducation et quel est le but de l'éducation. Le but de l'éducation, c'est d'éduquer à certaines valeurs. C'est les valeurs de la protection de l'environnement, c'est aussi comment nous approchons le climat. Et maintenant, nous avons déjà sous l'objectif numéro 4, il y a 4,7 qui est éducation pour une éducation pour un développement durable. Il y a tout un travail que nous avions mené. Et je rappelle la décennie des Nations Unies pour l'éducation au développement durable qui s'est terminée en 2014, et j'ai mentionné lors de mon bref introduction des directives notre conférence, grande conférence au Japon, au Aichi Nagoya, où je vais inviter Son Altesse Royale Lala Hasna d'inaugurer le travail de cette conférence importante. Je mentionnerai aussi un autre nouveau concept que nous avons, c'est éducation pour une citoyenneté globale, qui fait partie encore une fois de cet objectif numéro 4. Et déjà, il y a 40 pays qui ont introduit dans leur système éducatif, dans les curricula, cette notion importante sur l'éducation pour le climat. Ce n'est pas suffisant, c'est le début. Nous sommes très conscients qu'avoir seulement 40 pays, c'est le début de ce travail tellement important, mais les éléments sont déjà là. Et je crois qu'avec la mobilisation des gouvernements, la société civile et le secteur privé, nous allons réussir à avancer parce que pour nous, c'est crucial. Quand on parle de la mise en œuvre de l'accord de Paris, sans cette sensibilisation qui commence dans les banques des écoles, ce n'est pas possible d'avancer. Et après, il y a tout le travail. Mais nous allons discuter. Dans le rapport, il y a pas mal déjà des éléments. Ce sont l'éducation professionnelle et technique sur le climat. Ce sont comment créer les sociétés vertes. Nous parlons d'une économie verte, mais pour nous, l'économie verte ne marchera jamais sans avoir des sociétés vertes et avoir des citoyens qui sont conscients aux enjeux de changement climatique.
Director General, I'm sure many people in this room know how UNESCO actually works with governments to integrate sustainable development in education, but maybe some people don't. And maybe you could just elaborate a little bit on how UNESCO actually does work with governments to empower them to integrate this in their policies.
Well, we hold them accountable. I think UNESCO is an intergovernmental agency. UNESCO is a specialized agency of the United Nations. And I think our strength comes from the fact that when we adopt a decision, member states are behind this decision. It is after a very elaborate, sometimes difficult discussions with member states, but when we adopt a decision like the goal number 4 on inclusive quality education and lifelong learning for all, that we adopted with the participation of more than 150 ministers of education, of all our partners from the United Nations system, of representatives of the private sector, of civil society, the big institutions, organizations. When we adopt this, then it becomes their own agenda. So this is an agenda of our member states, and we hold them accountable. I think this is very important that all of our member states are coming with their reports. We have peer reviews sometimes of sharing experiences of good practices. We serve as this very large platform of sharing good practices and experience, and we all go together forward in implementing these important decisions. I think this is the strength of such an organization like UNESCO, to set the strategic goal after a very profound commitment of our member states, to look forward, to share these best practices, to involve the civil society, academia, and the private sector, and then we all go together forward.
Thank you very much indeed. We might have the Minister of Morocco for Education joining us, and if he does, we will incorporate him straight away. But until that moment occurs, I'd like to call on Kathleen Rodgers, who's president of the Earth Day Network. And I think many of us in the UN system have worked with Kathleen on, we might say, informal education, Kathleen. You're wandering now back. Oh, you're coming up. Okay. So come up and tell us a little bit about how you're doing a kind of different kind of education.
Thank you very much. I'd like to first congratulate the Princess Lala Hasna and the Mohammed VI Foundation. Earth Day Network has worked with them for many years. We chose Morocco as one of our key countries for our 40th anniversary, and we congratulate them for their work on solar, on environmental literacy. They've even made changes to their constitution that recognizes the importance of the environment. All of these things, we've been a very willing partner to their work. We consider Morocco, for geopolitical reasons and every other reason, because of their good heart, good nature, incredible intelligence, and forward thinking, to be a major driver of climate education around the world. I'd also like to recognize my board chair, Gerald Torres, who's a quite well-known lawyer in the United States, and thank you for coming. As we all know, on Earth Day this past year, world leaders signed the climate agreement. And in that climate agreement, sort of dead center of it, is the recognition that whether it's corporations or civil society, they must be partners of the climate movement. Implicit in these provisions in the climate agreement is the recognition that maybe for the first time in history, governments are ahead of the people. And so we are all deeply concerned on Education Day that we allow and work with people, children around the world, to bring them up to speed, to educate them, and to include them in the important from green jobs to success. As we know from the Industrial Revolution, very few people shared in the financial rewards of that. We can't afford to have that, and every country represented here needs to be fully educated so they can attract investment and have the rewards of green jobs, because inexorably, like the Industrial Revolution, we will be moving towards a green economy, notwithstanding steps backward that other countries, including my own, have taken recently. And so therefore, for Earth Day 2017, we're announcing the beginning of a worldwide global literacy plan. Earth Day now is over 1 billion people engage in Earth Day worldwide in 192 countries, and that number of people is growing every year. Our 50th anniversary will be in 2020, and so to that end, we are announcing 5 campaigns, climate literacy being one of them. We're working with the World Bank, the UN, many other institutions to come up with the set of problems that we want to solve by 2020, and so far, everybody is on board. There's something about having a date and time that allows people from the plastics industry to the endangered species world to come together and say enough is enough. Climate literacy is a step in that direction. We are working, we just announced a 50 US state study on climate and environmental literacy plans. Much to our surprise, some of our most conservative states in the United States, which we call red states, actually are very proactive on climate literacy and environmental education. And we understand that climate and environment can rise above political beliefs and move forward without becoming part of the incredibly difficult battle that we're facing in the US. And there is, of course, the second study that we're doing, which I think is key to this, which we hope to learn a lot from UNESCO and other people about what the impediments are to global literacy, and the World Bank and Connect for Climate are supporting that effort. Our other partners include the UN Foundation, the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation, and many, many science museums and Association of Science Museums around the world. We hope to have, for our 50th anniversary, and we do now, millions and millions of teachers engaged. Each Earth Day, every single school in the United States and many, many schools around the world have participatory engagement in Earth Day, and we see that number growing. So in India and China, They're working on Earth Day in all of their schools. We look forward to working with all of you in the coming years. And I again want to congratulate all the efforts here. And we hope we can all move forward, civil society, multilaterals, and governments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen. I was only a bit upset, Kathleen, you didn't mention Angry Birds. Ah, well, so last year, Kathleen was very instrumental in working with Rovio, as you know, the company in Scandinavia that actually makes Angry Birds, that game. And there was a special climate edition. And I think that was also very interesting for education in terms of people getting messages. So there's all kinds of ways of doing it, aren't there? So last but not least, we're very pleased to have back with us Rashid Ben Mukhtar Bena Abdallah, who is the Minister of National Education and also vocational training, I understand. So if you could just give us a couple of remarks or a few remarks about your perspective on this. You can do it from here or you can do it avec le microphone. Okay.
How have I to call you, my dear friend, and Madame Directrice Générale. Thank you first for being here, for your support. I'm not supposed to take a floor. Perhaps you, but not me. But it's not a big issue. First, I would say that in Marrakesh, we don't have angry birds. We have happy birds. And that is very important. Well, it means that it makes us more happy. And today, we probably should be more happy. We have the chance to have Her Highness with us for this event, and it's very important. And I have to commend her for all the work she has been doing for a long time, and all its commitment for environment and schools. And the work we have undertaken together for years now is absolutely fantastic. And the main reward are, well, the achievement of our students when it's come to environment, to climate change. And it is easy to see it when you visit schools. The schools for these events are green. I can say almost all around the country. Many things have been achieved before, and especially this year. For example, we have all the light bulbs are now LEDs, and that is very important in schools. But we have also many schools that have now like gardens, students planting trees, planting trees everywhere, and also designing a lot of posters and poems and whatever. All of this is very important. But the most important is what you used to see in their eyes when they talk about that. And I'm surprised when many of the challenges that we adults are now discovering, you discover that the children are able to understand them very quickly. And to say, well, yes, we are the young generation, what you have been said as the young together, and we will want a clean planet. We want a clean earth. We want to live also. And that is very important. It's a good and important message. So for us who are responsible for education, it is very important to take into account what the students and what our children want exactly for their future. We are doing our best in Morocco, and especially regarding the curricula. I think that our curricula have to change dramatically. And we have to see now that climate change and environment, the sustainable development are so important that we have to put them in each of the program, but also in the disciplines. When you talk climate, we have to introduce climate when we teach mathematics, when we teach physics, when we teach chemistry, biology, and so on. We have to link our biosphere to what is going in the classroom. And that is very important, that students feel that they're part of this world, part of the biosphere, and they can react with it. And the reaction have consequences all of this is important, but we need teachers also to do that. It's very important to train them too. So it's a huge, huge program. But I have to say that today, with the effort made by UNESCO, by UNICEF, by different organization, association, we can say that we are on the right track. So personally, I'm optimistic. I hope that we will achieve a lot in the coming years. And your presence here, the importance you are giving to this event is perhaps one of the proof that we can go far ahead. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. So we can open the floor now to you, the guests. Fire some questions at our distinguished panel here. Don't be shy. We haven't got a tremendous amount of time, but we can maybe take 3, maximum 4 questions. This gentleman here had his hand up first. Is there a roving microphone? I have one here. I could maybe hand it to you, or maybe somebody else could. Let me come down.
Thank you. I'm Professor Michael Skoulos. I'm the chairman of the Mediterranean Information Office for Environment, Culture and Sustainable Development, and UNESCO chair for Sustainable Development Management and Education. Just before this meeting, we had a very well-attended meeting in the Green Zone for the action plan on the Mediterranean strategy on ESD. And I would like to report to you that in fact, there is a big support from governments and non-governmental organizations. On the 8th and 9th of December, we expect the ministerial meeting in Cyprus to approve the action plan. And this, I think, is a unique because we have integrated in the Education for Sustainable Development strategy and action plan all the requirements for the climate change. And if we have managed to do that in this region, in the Mediterranean region, a north-south interface with all the crises and problems we have, I think is a promising example for other regions. And I would like to have to thank Mrs. Bokova for her support for the strategy. I know that you supported also this action plan. And Morocco is one of the 3 champions, together with Cyprus and Malta, that are going to be presented there. And I thank you very much, Mr. Minister, and the country for all your efforts. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, so not so much a question as a statement. Maybe the next one could be a question. It might even be, how do you make climate change education exciting and fun? So what about the chap there at the back? Well, maybe we'll go the white shirt and then the gentleman there with the, it's complicated. Just microphone, down, down, down. The young person there with the hand up, yes, and then the man behind afterwards.
Hi, I'm Chiara Soletti from Italian Climate Network. And since we just heard what is the commitment of Morocco regarding climate education, we were wondering, for example, we saw some demonstrations from teachers yesterday. So we were wondering if the Morocco's educational system is experiencing some problems with their teachers, how they are going to implement effectively climate education, because if there's a problem before on the floor, we were wondering how they're going to do that.
Okay, Minister,
much.
Minister, the question was, is there a problem with teachers in the Morocco education system? There was some demonstration or, I don't know myself, but.
Sorry.
Is that working? Unbelievable. Okay. Technically, it's been a challenge. We need some technological education here as well, I think. There we go. Let's try that.
Sorry. Can you repeat the question? Because I was busy with this,
oh, yes.
with air conditioning. With,
okay. I think the question was there were some protests yesterday by teachers, maybe.
Yeah.
And are teachers okay in Morocco? Do you have enough? Is there a problem? Will you get climate education in the schools?
Thank you for this question. You know that teacher like to demonstrate everywhere in the world. And we are happy to have teachers who demonstrate. This one, I have to confess, if I understand, they are not yet teachers. That's the issue. There are students who want to be teachers. It's quite different. And they want to be teacher with their own conditions. It means somebody is looking for a job, but he's asking to the company, to the administration who would like to hire him, exactly what he wants to work with her. And we are asking them nothing. If there are candidates, they can, of course, well, apply. And if they are not happy with our conditions, they cannot apply. But we can understand that nowadays we have a new way of thinking. And it's very interesting to see this change in the mind. So it means, okay, I want something, I have to get it. And that, let us demonstrate. So we are a country with respecting the opinions and of course, all the freedom of speech and so on. So we're happy that you can show you that in Morocco, people can demonstrate freely and say whatever you want. That's my answer.
Right, we'll take that gentleman there who's standing up, the gentleman there who's standing up. Can you see? L'homme qui, yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Dennis Signolo from Education International. And thanks to Madam Bokova and all the dignitaries who have already spoken. I want to say we all agree that education is important and a powerful tool for combating climate change. And we all agree that we need to support our students. But I haven't heard much about teachers. Without empowered teachers, teachers with the knowledge, with the skills and support system to actually deliver climate change education, we won't achieve anything. So how can we, by we, I'm talking about the UN, I'm talking about UNESCO, but most importantly about governments, what concrete measures can we take, are we taking to empower teachers to finance climate change education? Thank you.
Well, I will try to respond to this question. I'm happy that Education International is with us. It is one of our strongest partners from the civil society. And just to say that with Education International, with the ILO, the International Labour Organization, in September, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of a very important normative document, the recommendation on the status of teacher, ILO UNESCO recommendation on the status of teacher. And I think this was once again an occasion to remind ourselves of something that you did mention, that we will not achieve goal number 4 or whatever ambition we have in education, in this particular case, talking about climate, environmental protection, sustainable development education, without the role of teachers. Because of course, we know that there are new technologies and we know that opportunities are much higher, but as I always emphasize, nothing can substitute a good teacher. And this is where I think we ask governments, institutions, educational institutions, partners to focus on teachers. I know that it's a very challenging, and the minister also mentioned, and I have been in many parts of the world where they go through an educational reform, and it is difficult because it touches upon every single family. But I think, and we are always inviting to elevate the status of teacher, to give the teacher, to support the teacher, to give the training, necessary training of teachers when we speak about climate change or environmental protection. And this is where UNESCO is working with partners. The International Task Force for Teachers is hosted by us. It's a partnership between civil society and other international organizations and governments. And we know also that in many cases there are lack of teachers in order to implement the goal number 4 under the Sustainable Development Goal. So I would like to kind of reassure you that we are really ambitious to elevate the status of teacher including when it comes to the climate change. But in order to do this, we want governments to allocate more financial resources to education globally. You know that our ambition is between 4 and 6% of their GDP. In some cases, it's more because I would say the requirements are much higher. But we want also that part of this goes for the training of teachers. And this is where also the higher education comes into the picture, because we cannot have qualified teachers without supporting higher education, without supporting technical vocational training, which is costly, and we need the private sector as partners. So we understand the complexity of it, but I think we know where we want to go, and this is very important. And jointly with Education International, we can move forward this very important agenda.
Thank you. We'll probably just take a couple of more questions. I know there's a lot of hands going up. There's a gentleman right at the back, and there's also a gentleman here. So we'll take the question from him. And the guy right at the back is right at the back in the middle. Okay, so just gentleman here, and then right at the back. Can you see the man with his hand up? Yeah.
I'm William Ngoma from South Africa. We acknowledge the good work that is done by UNESCO, and we applaud the the interventions that you make. But there's just one challenge: accessibility. For instance, the Global Education Monitoring Report, it might happen that it will take 6-7 years before one in the remote part of the country gets it. How do you ensure that when there is this spread of information, it reaches the people with great ease? We might assume that they do have computers. In some cases, they don't. How do we then ensure that even those that don't have computers have access to this report as soon as possible, so that there is this cumulative build-up of information throughout the world, not only in selected areas?
Well, that was a relief. There's only one problem, so that if we can solve that, we've solved everything. Would anybody like to answer that question? Yeah.
I can't exactly talk on behalf of UNESCO, but in this case, we're all partners in a global challenge, which is how to deliver education for all children, young people, and adults. And I could say, first of all, that even for education for sustainable development during the United Nations decade, between 2005 and 2014, delivering education for all was the #1 pillar of the agenda. Because, of course, we cannot even be talking about environmental education, climate change education, different types of education, without ensuring that all children have equal opportunities to good quality education. Now, coming to your particular question about the report, our report, with the support primarily of UNESCO, but also a number of other partners, is being launched all over the world. We have a target of more than 100 national launches. And in addition to those, we have, of course, events like this, where we have tried to break down the different messages that come from the report, which are not only for planet, but also for all the other aspects of sustainable development, which include equity and inclusion, include peace, prosperity, include urban development. So for that purpose, that's why I was referring to the multiplicity of audiences we have, and a reminder that equitable and quality education has so many different aspects that all deserve careful scrutiny and monitoring by the international community. And this is the role we have come to play for the next 15 years, thanks to the mandate offered by the international community. And we stand here to help you, your governments, to deliver on the promise that was made last year.
And I just would say, I mean, I lived in Kenya for 12 years, and the power of radio in the rural areas, the power of radio to get messages out is awesome. And you know, coming from South Africa, that nearly everybody seems to have a mobile phone these days in Africa. So there are lots of delivery systems if people can get it right. There's the man very, very far at the back. Oh, he's standing up now.
That's
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Romulo Dantas. I represent the World YMCA. My question is about partnership. We always hear that partnership is something important and something that needs to be done. But when it comes to youth organizations and young people, we don't really feel that this is happening on the levels that it should. So I would like to leave this room with some message of hope that real partnership, where we take responsibility, we share resources, and we deliver programs to help young people to get educated on climate change, can be a reality. So I just want to hear from you, the three of you, what's the message that I can leave and tell my young people out there that something's going to happen?
I just want to react immediately because it comes from a youth organization, youth representation. I do believe that partnerships, particularly with civil society, when it comes to awareness about climate change, is critical. Civil society, academia also, because we heard from our UNESCO chair the importance of the academic contribution to solving tackling the issues of climate change, but also in very practical terms. Now, that is why last year we decided to concentrate on youth, on young people. Every 2 years, when UNESCO has our general conference, we have a youth forum, which is considered among the UN system one of the most prominent gathering of young people. And last year, before COP21 in Paris, we decided to dedicate our youth forum on climate change and how it is important that young people are involved in climate change. And I can give dozens of examples of different conferences, venues, but probably one of the most focused and important was the youth forum that we did organize in Aichi before our conference in Aichi, Nagoya, on education for sustainable development. And there were representatives of youth organizations which represented not just one organization, but they were representative of networks. And we hoped by this that there will be a multiplying effect afterwards about how these networks of young people are engaged in this work. And then I could mention a very important network other that UNESCO has. It is our Associated Schools Network. UNESCO has more than 10,000 schools all over the world which are associated with the work of UNESCO. And most of them are focusing nowadays on environmental protection, on climate change, on education for sustainable development, and education for global citizenship. I think this is where, when we say it started on the benches of schools, apart from working with governments of putting within the education systems in curricula of training of teachers, we think it's important also to have the bottom-up approach. We hope to make children, the young people in primary, secondary schools and further on to be proactive, to be themselves, as we say, to take over this agenda in their own hands, and in order to afterwards be a responsible citizen. So we try to do it both from governments, but also to make a little bit more to encourage the civil society young people to be engaged themselves.
So I think we've got more hands than we have time, but I think we could take one last question. And I have to be honest, the lady with the red glasses was before the lady in the purple shawl. But I think one more question is fine, I think, then thank you. So the lady with the red glasses on. It's very, very clever to have red glasses because then you notice immediately, you got the lady with the black glasses, there'd be 50 people,
Oui,
but red glasses.
Bonjour tout le monde, je vais parler en français là. Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue à toute l'assistance étrangère. Donc cette fois vous êtes à Marrakech et la deuxième fois, venez à Meknès, ma ville natale que j'aime tant. Donc Leila Garret, personne associative et personne battante et qui s'intéresse à l'environnement depuis bien longtemps et ex de l'Académie régionale d'éducation nationale de Meknès. Donc, voilà, je voudrais poser une question à monsieur notre ministre, notre cher ministre qui est là. Donc, j'espère que la prochaine fois, il sera dans le gouvernement prochain, Inch'Allah, si c'est possible, parce qu'on fera tant de choses ensemble, nous, associatives et ministères. Voilà, je voudrais dire, puisqu'on parle de l'environnement, nous allons à la citoyenneté. Ce n'est pas de la citoyenneté que nous allons à l'environnement. Donc, et puisque l'environnement est une chose très importante et l'éducation à l'environnement aussi, il faut commencer par l'infrastructure de nos écoles. Je ne dis pas le contraire. Il y a beaucoup de choses qui ont été faites et vive Sa Majesté notre roi qui a fait beaucoup de choses pour notre Maroc et aussi la Fondation. Mais il faut que, puisqu'on va parler à un élève de l'environnement, il faut que son infrastructure de l'école et là où il étudie soit en bonne et due forme. Dans l'urbain, il y a les écoles privées. Mais puisque nous, en tant qu'association, je travaille beaucoup dans le milieu rural, il y a beaucoup de choses à faire, énormément de choses à faire, et il faut se retrousser les manches pour commencer. Donc, ceci d'une part, et d'autre part, étant donné que nous travaillons dans les Dar Talibat, que Sa Majesté, là où Sa Majesté donne une très grande importance, et la femme et la fille, c'est-à-dire de demain qui va être femme, il faut qu'on commence par les filles et les filles du monde rural, parce que c'est la génération future. Et pour ne pas m'étaler, pour ne pas dire des choses un petit peu négatives, parce qu'on est là pour débattre de l'environnement, il faut tous, nous tous, c'est l'effort de nous tous pour réussir l'éducation à l'environnement et au développement durable, parce qu'on est un petit peu loin.
Fantastic.
Voilà, et merci.
That was the longest question I think I've heard in a very long time. But Minister, yeah, maybe the answer could be a little shorter than the question, and because we have to go and have dinner sometime at 8 o'clock.
Well, I will answer in French. Bon, merci beaucoup pour cette question et je dirais la passion aussi avec laquelle vous exprimez ces opinions. Simplement pour vous rassurer, pour vous dire que, et vous le savez d'ailleurs, que tous ces problèmes ont été bien analysés à travers toutes les consultations qu'on a fait. Vous êtes plus de 100 000 à avoir répondu à tout ça. Et donc, on a en tête tout ce qu'il faudrait faire. Il faut dire qu'aujourd'hui, on a une vision stratégique, on a une manière de faire, on a 12 grands projets qui englobent bien sûr le problème de l'infrastructure, de tout ce qui est réhabilitation, etc. Et comme bonne nouvelle quand même, et ceci, bien entendu, assez récente, peut-être que vous ne l'avez pas encore appris, cette année, nous avons obtenu directement un budget supplémentaire de 1,5 milliard de dirhams, plus un autre 1,5 milliard qui doit nous revenir de manière indirecte, ce qui fera 3 milliards de dirhams de plus, spécifiquement pour aménager justement et surtout le rural, car vous savez que le principe de l'équité est quelque chose de très important dans notre vision et qu'une bonne partie de ces ressources vont aller vers le monde rural. Voilà pour vous rassurer. Et bien entendu, les Dar Taliba et tout ça, bon, c'est un autre sujet. Mais sachez, soyez certaines que l'aspect genre est présent dans notre esprit et qu'on fait tout pour que justement ces principes, qui est un principe fondamental de notre Constitution, soient respectés. Merci.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I think they've all been working very hard here for hours now. And so we're going to bring the event to a close here. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much indeed to the Director General of UNESCO for being here and spending so much time with us, and also the Minister of National Education and Vocational Training of Morocco, and our dear presenter here with these key findings on this marvelous report, and Kathleen and everybody else. So have a great day.
It's not my job.